Okay, so let's cover what the spinal nerves are in terms of groups. A plexus is a group of nerves. What nerve groups do we have? Well, we have some that, let's get to some of the things. So these ones, in general, if you notice my drawing, I cut off at about here. This becomes a little more complicated than what you're going to be studying for my course. So in addition to the roots coming out from the dorsal and the ventral and them combining to the spinal nerves, they actually will further split into rami or rammus, one that goes to the back, one that goes to the front. The one that goes to the front is called ventral rami or rammus, and the one that goes to the back is called the dorsal rammus. The dorsal rammus typically will supply the muscles of the back, whereas the ventral rammus will actually supply the muscles of the front and a lot of the internal organs. And then from there, you also have branches for sympathetic nerve output. When we cover sympathetics, we'll talk about it in general, but you don't have to know this crazy little breakdown. It's not too bad for understanding, but it does get a little bit complicated. So I cut off our review at here. So you just have to know dorsal root ganglia, that the nerves that come in from here for sensory information will combine with nerves coming out of the ventral root, which are motor, and the spinal nerve is a combination of sensory and motor axons. From there, if you're going into advanced level studies, then yes, you're going to be studying this. This is what we call the sympathetic chain ganglia, and it's just basically groups of cell bodies that are being passed from different levels of the vertebrae. Blah, 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 blah. Just remember this little section here. So dermatomes, what is a dermatome? We still haven't covered the plexuses. There's some that are very specific that I want you to know, but for now, let's cover some of these definitions. Dermatome is a skin region. So here's the best example of it. It's the distribution for each nerve level. So if I have, here's the example. T4 is about the net level of the nipple. And don't ask if there's a difference between male and female. We're just going to memorize it as T4, level of the nipple. And then T10 is umbilicus. These are landmark or very typical dermatome questions for a lot of exams, not mine. And then L1 is the groin area. So again, it was T4, then T10, and then L1. And that's the typical questions you might see maybe in med school. One of the things you want to note is peripheral neuropathy, right? If anybody has ever had shingles before that's watching this video, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Most of us haven't had it, but every year in my class, I always have 1 or 2. So that's a pretty high number. 1 or 2 in 300 to 400 students that's consistently every year I have 1. So if I have, let's say, the level of T4, let's do T4, and I have a shingles virus, right, which is, so there is the chickenpox. If you've ever had chickenpox, you have the potential of having shingles. So it's a similar virus. Don't have to worry about the virus name. Just understand that shingles stays in one of these dermatomes. So when you have this rash, very painful rash that spreads along the length of the dermatome, and typically it's unilateral, that means it's only on one side. If it's bilateral, then that's pretty harsh for the patient that has it. But unilateral, and it lasts from 1 to 2 weeks. It depends on how quickly the patient recovers. They could have it once occur in their lifetime, or they could have it happen recurrently. It could be something that's recurrent. So this is a dermatome, and the distribution, when you have something like shingles, tells you or shows you this kind of pattern. So this is a nerve